The upcoming pay-per-view that is this weekend, NXT Battleground from the UFC Apex, really putting in the fact that WWE is TKO owned now. They're in bed with the UFC. They're all together. They're cross-promoting. If you watched King and Queen of the Ring, they promoted a UFC event that is taking place in Saudi Arabia in a few weeks on the WWE broadcast. NXT Battleground was actually scheduled to take place the same time as AEW Double or Nothing originally from Savannah, Georgia, with tickets, in the $30 range to get in the door. Move it to the UFC Apex, which is essentially the UFC's version of the WWE Performance Center. And I'll say this much: front row ticket prices are $500. And the get in the door is $150, which is a lot for UFC. But for being in a venue where the capacity is like 800 people and it looks smaller than that, I will actually say I'm very surprised that, one, there were still tickets available at those kind of prices. And they didn't just sell out immediately to like super fans on like packages, but that there's actually tickets available for $150 a piece. So surprised that they're actually that low. I was expecting it to just be kind of similar to like when WWE did the kickoff show for WrestleMania in Las Vegas, where they had like packages for essentially a free event, but charged people $500 if they wanted like good seats and a dinner afterwards with Cody Rhodes and sign member, and they sold out, right, on 1 week's notice. So I thought, with like 600 seats in this place in Las Vegas, I imagine the WWE superfans are going to swallow this up, the 600 of them. They're going to pay like $1,000 a piece. It's going to be a very like intimate setting. It's going to be, something where it's the exclusive of the exclusive. It's not in a big arena for everyone to buy tickets for. But hey, they still had, last I checked, a few tickets available for like $150 to get in the door. So that shows you right there kind of NXT's, $150 is a lot of money, but it shows you clearly like NXT, when it comes to the level of like TNA and stuff, because that's what TNA, right? These are the crowds that they draw, under 1,000, right? So under 1,000 people, and it's not a sold out event as of this minute, shows that, NXT, is not what it was, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago.
The product's actually pretty good, though.
The product is getting good, and what's making it good as of late and getting some eyeballs on it is the NXT/TNA crossover that is happening. Now, we obviously seen in the last couple Royal Rumbles.
No, hey, hold on. Jordan Grace said NXT/TNA. I just want to make sure we cover that. She wore some gear that said NXT/TNA together, and she posted a picture with the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. It sounds like she's getting a pretty lucrative, contract, so to speak, like kind of one of those short-term kind of deals that TNA and WWE worked out, where she's making per appearance, it sounds like 6 figures, which good for Jordan Grace on that.
6 figures, that's a lot.
Yeah, she's
5 figures, 6 figures.
Yeah, they're saying low 6 figures. Yeah. Of course, you believe what you believe in the wrestling, internet wrestling community and the news letters and so to speak out there. But yeah, they were saying upwards of 6 figures for her.
I was going to say, because if she gets paid like $20,000 on appearance, that's a lot of money, right? Because that's really, let's break it down. The WWE superstars of the world who make $800,000, $900,000 a year. Triple H recently just said that the minimum now is in the 6 figures. It's like $350 for a main roster.
Yeah, guys like people like Tozawa, who they're more of a comedic act. He's making for example, he's probably at the low end. So even at the low end, he's still making over $250,000 a year.
But you have to think though, even at as much as they do work, right? That breaks down to like $5,000 an appearance, because they're every $5,000 for a house show, $5,000 for So it's not it's a lot of money for sure, but they do work more than once or twice a year, right, for that kind of money. So getting like 100,000. So essentially, giving Jordan Grace as much money as an entire year of a full-time competitor for her time in NXT.
Here's the thing, though. It's possible that maybe it's over 6 figures for the life of her appearances. That I don't know. I just know like it's WWE's paying for her services over 6 figures. And in what way, shape, or form, I'm not sure. But that's being reported out there from different outlets. And speaking of that, it sounds like Moose is getting the itch to wrestle in WWE. I guess there's reports out there as well that he talked to Jordan Grace and pretty much said, hey, let them, let Sean and let HBK, the crew there, let them know that I'd like to do some stuff too. So could we see Moose in the future? That'd be kind of cool.
It's a win-win, but I will say that it does obviously show, and who really cares? TNA doesn't, but it does show that TNA is essentially not on the same level as WWE, right? Because TNA is giving their top stars to WWE, and WWE is putting them on their developmental, right? And I imagine this is going to flip over to be WWE putting some stars on the big next TNA pay-per-view, which is probably going to be at Slammiversary on July 20th in Montreal. And I imagine the people who are going to be on that event are also more like the NXT name. So it's essentially saying, give us your best baseball player. We'll put him on our AAA team. We'll give you one of our AAA players, and you'll put him on your major league team.
Maybe the North, formerly of the North, Ethan Page, maybe he makes a return to the TNA. I know that's his old stopping grounds with the North back in the day. And as as we were talking about NXT, he's another name that appeared. He's under contract with WWE after AEW. I felt like AEW never used him the right way. Like I just felt like he was very underutilized. So it's good to see All Ego, and by all reports, WWE backstage, all the producers and all the powers that be are stoked by Ethan Page's early work in the last couple weeks here. So I know he's going to be facing Trick Williams here coming up at the pay-per-view. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on Ethan Page so far in WWE.
I mean, I did like that Trick, Ethan Page came in, but a lot of people have mentioned that it's been Trick Williams who is wanting this match. So it's not just like Ethan Page calling for it and then him doing nothing to get it. Trick Williams is a champion. He gets to pick essentially who he gets to face, within reason, storyline wise. And he's open for this challenge. And I'm very curious, do we see, some switching of titles essentially to set up rematches, in Montreal? Now, here's another question. TNA has, I think, Against All Odds pay-per-view, which is coming up pretty shortly, but it's more like a premium live event, not pay-per-view. The next big pay-per-view is Slammiversary, which is in July in Montreal. But the question I guess I have for this is NXT's got Heatwave coming up before that in Toronto. So the next time that these guys are essentially out and about will be in Toronto at Heatwave the night after Money in the Bank. And I'm kind of curious how that essentially works out, because let's say a Jordan Grace does beat Roxanne Perez, which I actually think is a very good possibility of happening. Just because then we obviously do the switcheroo and we go to a TNA event and have them kind of bring the NXT championship.
So wait, let me ask you, if you had to put the odds at a certain percentage, what's your percentage of Jordan Grace defeating Roxanne Perez?
I'd say 90%.
You think so? You really think it's that high?
Yeah, I see Jordan Grace winning this, and then Roxanne Perez having to then come to TNA to try to get it back, kind of doing that kind of situation. And I'm going to go 50% on Ethan Page beating Trick Williams, and taking that title over to TNA, because I guess my thing is good for WWE. While TNA is not a super important program, especially in the WWE world, it's essentially WWE getting a rampage, if you will, for NXT, getting a secondary lesser than show. So if you have Ethan Page with your NXT championship and you have Jordan Grace with your NXT women's championship and they show up on TNA Impact, well, clearly, obviously, you're going to have a lot of involvement on your regular NXT show. And then on TNA Impact, which is a show on a channel you don't pay to be on, right? You don't have to pay any of the costs or the expenses, right? Obviously, you don't reap any of the rewards when it comes to ticket sales, but who cares? Impact doesn't even really get much ticket sales.
No,
we're getting better than that. You're getting exposure. So like I said, you're getting like a poor man's Rampage. Instead of buying another show for NXT or building another show for NXT, you guys go put your guy, NXT puts some of their talent on other branded shows. So you're flipping throughout the week, you're watching WWE on Monday, WWE on Friday, WWE on Tuesday with NXT, and then you're seeing some WWE on Thursday. You know what I mean? With Impact, with TNA Impact. So, I see them doing a little more of the crossing over here. And hey, obviously AEW's got a lot of egos over there. So it's a little more difficult to do the crossover because right now those guys feel like they're at battle with each other when it comes to ratings, when it comes to the product. WWE clearly doesn't necessarily feel they're at battle with AEW, but the point is they're not they're trying to be on the same level. TNA, as we learned a while ago, when it comes to the arenas they book and the way that they are kind of been doing things the last couple of years, they're not going to go away. And the reason they're not going to go away is because I think their business model is pretty decent. They have put their foot in the sand and said, we are a solid, high level indie, essentially, right? We're going to essentially take over what Ring of Honor was doing, and we're going to succeed. We're going to try to sell out 1,000-seat buildings. We're going to be able to travel with some middle level talent. We're going to try to get some TV ratings and sell some merchandise and exist in that realm, right? We're not here to be billionaires. We're not here to compete with WWE. We're not going to bring back Hulk Hogan and Sting and those guys. And I think that's a great spot. And that's why it's easier for them to work with WWE and NXT because of that, because they realize where they are. I feel like Tony Khan would have an issue, right? It's with any of this, right? He's not going to bring over Hangman Page, or he's not going to bring over MJF to work at NXT Battleground, right? So with that, that's where that comes an issue. And I will say good on WWE, because who would ever thought that, TNA Impact, right? Normally it's WWE over there, or like back in the day when Kenny Omega was on TNA, got me watching TNA, but TNA stars getting me to watch more NXT, right? Yeah. And it's not necessarily because I like TNA better, but it's because of that intrigue, that crossover. And frankly, I do think that the TNA stars that they're bringing in, because they're not the developmental people down at NXT that we're used to, they are more established stars coming in to NXT. And that's why I'm watching them coming over, because it is like you said, if Moose came over, Moose, no offense to the NXT roster, even though he's never been in the WWE and that kind of light, he is a more established star globally than most of the people who are on their way up through NXT.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you mentioned that. With it's weird to say, but I've been drawn to watch more NXT, just like you have, because of these TNA superstars like Jordan Grace, and potentially, I know it's a rumor, obviously, but maybe Moose makes the transition over. Yeah, I think it's a good thing, because it's you're also showing people, like TNA is having their their championship on WWE programming, so they're getting more eyeballs. And by the way, a lot of people are really liking the TNA belts, for example. So I mean, even little things like that. And then when Jordan Grace dominates, they're like, oh, she's really good at TNA. Maybe I should go flip on the channel and find out where I can watch more of her. And then they'll get exposed potentially to watching other competitors from TNA. So I think it's a cool trade-off. I think WWE obviously is winning this, obviously, because they're getting the top stars from TNA to come there. So I do think it's a win, but I think TNA knows where they are in the kind of the hierarchy of the business right now. So for me, I feel like it's a good thing. I feel like it's good for all parties involved. I like the fact that WWE is opening that door to work with other companies. I mean, AEW's been doing it for a while with New Japan and AAA and CMLL, which we saw this past week on Dynamite. Like it's cool that they're doing that, but also it's cool that WWE is doing it as well. I feel like you're getting more talent exposed to the bigger brands that we might otherwise not see. So I mean, I think it's good across the board.
Yeah, I think TNA working with and TNA is going to get some benefits here too, because I think this is going to go both ways. Now, again, I don't think Seth Rollins is going to be showing up on TNA Impact. That's not going to happen. WWE is going to bring over some people who, hey, NXT doesn't have as many house shows, so if they can they're looking to develop their own talent too. So hey, why not send over some of these low-level NXT people to be on more television? You know what I mean? It's not going to hurt WWE. Like I said, they're not bringing over main stars. I don't think Becky Lynch is showing up on TNA Impact. I don't think Seth Rollins or Cody Rhodes are doing those kind of people. But, hey, yeah, it's not going to hurt,
No.
Roxanne Perez to go over to TNA Impact. And speaking of this pay-per-view this weekend, and we talk about crossover and we talk about things that are a little, scratch your head a little bit, right? Yeah. So we have this NXT Underground match, which is essentially a wrestling version of a shoot. They're trying to, while they're in the UFC Apex, kind of give off that UFC vibe. And Shayna Baszler, who's got the MMA background, taking on Lola Vice in this NXT.
Lola Vice also has the background too.
Yes.
Just putting it out there.
So they all have this UFC background, right? And in MMA, right? Four wins, 2 by knockout, 2 by decision, and only 1 loss for Lola Vice versus Shayna Baszler. But the reason I bring this match up is because Shayna Baszler took on a big-time star in TNA Impact and somebody who's in GCW and is traveling the world essentially on the indie scene right now, Masha Slamovich, right? And they fought each other one-on-one in this style of match in Philadelphia, WrestleMania weekend, as part of GCW and Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, formerly Matt Riddle's Bloodsport before Matt Riddle signed with WWE, and kind of was a pay-per-view event in an indie arena that was tied to the idea of looking like a real shoot fight, but obviously with professional wrestlers and in more of a scripted way, but knowing that it's not high flying, it's more knockouts and takedowns and that kind of mentality, similar to what we saw with Raw Underground back in the day. But many people like myself were scratching our head why they were allowing Shayna Baszler to WrestleMania weekend be a part of GCW, right? WWE did not advertise this. WWE did not promote this. WWE did not get any money for the 500 people that were in attendance at the event. They were running their own events, WWE World and autograph signings, which they could easily have Shayna Baszler participate in at the same time. But instead, they're letting CM Punk and Braun Strowman and all these other people show up at an indie show, a GCW indie show in Philadelphia. They're letting Zoe Stark bring her to the ring. And might I add, Jordan Grace was the manager for Masha Slamovich in that match. And you're scratching your head and wondering, why is WWE, of all places, letting her participate in this? And now that they have this match, NXT Underground, we're kind of seeing, again, maybe a little, we're letting her participate in this because we are going to take what she's doing and bring it to our brand, and that's what we might see here with NXT Underground. So it is kind of, it reminds me a little bit back in the day of Vince McMahon, and not to the same exact scale, but, you know, Vince McMahon back in the day when he was starting to swallow up a lot of the territories where it seemed like he was being very friendly, and it seemed like, you know, he was being, you know, very warm and open to a few of these things. And really, he was just eyeing how he could swoop up some talent, how he could take these ideas, right? So it's like WWE being like, we'll let Shayna Baszler participate in this because we're very open and we let our independent contractors do what they want to do, right? Like, so we'll let her participate in this non-WWE thing. Oh, but by the way, she's going to be doing this in a few months, perfected, now that we know what it looks like, now that we know what she would look like in it, and we're going to put it on our pay-per-view, and we're going to now know how it looks and how to present it the best way because we're stealing it from, you know, something. And that's probably why they didn't promote it, because if they would have promoted it, then they'd have to promote it here as like this is the second time she's been involved in something like this. But they can kind of essentially let GCW house show this match for them so that they can then put it on pay-per-view. And I'm interested in watching this. And it should be Shayna Baszler obviously knows what she's doing in this. And hey, we still have other major stars in part of this event. I mean, Michin, part of essentially the OC, right? On the main roster, we know her as Mia Yim, currently known as Michin. She's on the SmackDown brand. She's going to be in this ladder match for the inaugural NXT Women's North American Championship. And I'm not going to lie, I've heard Jada Parker. I know her, but other than that, like these are some of the low-level NXT people I'm not very familiar with. I don't watch it nearly enough to be familiar with all these people. A lot of the ones in NXT that we were familiar with just got called up to the main roster recently, right? Lyra Valkyrie and stuff like that. Lyra Valkyria, might I say? So you know, with that, you know, I have to say, I don't know a lot of these people, but Michin, right? We know her. She's going to add some legitimacy to this match. And then moving on to the tag team match for the NXT Tag Team Championship, I'm familiar with Nathan Frazier and Axiom because they're the champions, right? And then they became the champions not too long ago. But they're taking on the OC. The OC is doing the job of essentially what Baron Corbin was doing down there, and that's, you know, getting some main roster notoriety, trying to build up themselves. And then Wes Lee involved in the NXT North American Championship match where Obafemi is the champion, but you got Wes Lee, who back in his days in Impact Wrestling, known as Desmond Xavier, as a high flyer. Obviously, he's been in NXT for quite a while now, but somewhat of a name who's crossed over into different kinds of things before. And Joe Coffey, I mean, he's been kind of crossed over when it comes to overseas in the world. But I mean, he's trained by Killian Dane and Finn Balor. And he made a name for himself, like in the ICWs of the world, overseas in England and stuff like that, taking on Noam Dar and those kind of people, and also in Japan, but mostly, an NXT name. But there's somebody essentially, if you're if you're a wrestling super fan, and you don't know everybody, but you're vaguely familiar with some people, there's somebody you'd recognize essentially in every one of these matches. And I think that's what's of interest because there's only 6 matches on the card.
And I was just going to say, Wes Lee to me is the name that I mean, Joe Coffey is pretty good. Like I know he runs Gallus, if I'm not mistaken. I know they're a pretty big time faction that could see a big push in the next months, years from now. Because I've heard rumors that they might be on the main roster sooner rather than later, is what I've been reading and hearing. So I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Coffey won here, but I really think it's the Wes Lee redemption story, so to speak, because of his injury and being out and just getting back after a long time, out of the ring. So like to me, like Obafemi has been a really good champion, but I do think it's Wes Lee's chance to regain what he carried for so long, and I think it'd be right for him to come full circle, get that back. I think it's regardless. All 3 competitors are pretty legit and they're all pretty good, so I wouldn't be upset with any one of them. Even if Obafemi retains, fine. If Joe Coffey wins, that's fine. I buy into all of these guys, and I think they're all really good NXT North American Championship material type players.
This is the inaugural NXT Women's North American Championship. The match it has Meacham for the ladder match. Is this something that is needed, is welcomed? What's your opinion on another belt in the NXT after this weekend?
I don't like it. I could care less about it as much. I mean, I know Sol Ruka has that Soul Snatcher, which is like a RKO type maneuver. It's I've seen the highlights all over. It's pretty cool. I don't know much. I know Fallon Henley a little bit, where she was with I forget the name of those guys. I think it was Briggs and Jensen, I believe. Off the top of my head, I think it was Briggs and Jensen, and she was part of that for a while. Jada Parker, I've heard a little bit. Meechin, obviously, I know. Kalani Jordan was in that level. I think it was the level up, or that it was like that newcomers tournament. I can't think of the name off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
I think it was the breakout
tournament. Yes.
Yeah, the breakout tournament. She was in that, so I remember her. If I had to pick one, I mean, Lash Legend's also in there as well. I mean, Lash Legend's been dealing with Mr. Trick Williams, so she's been kind of tied in with him a little bit. So I think her focus is kind of on Trick Williams these days. So for me, I would have to say Sol Ruka is going to be my favorite in that match.
I mean, that's a good pick. I mean, obviously, like, we got Meacham here, you know what I mean? Mia Yim. I don't think she wins it, but I think she's trying to provide some sort of legitimacy. But, I will say what this match shows off a lot too, and this pay-per-view maybe in general, but it kind of shows off a lot of the overall NXT development of the college stars that are not wrestlers turn to wrestlers. So like Lash Legend, right? For those who don't know, the 24th overall pick in the 2019 WNBA draft by the Seattle Storm, right? She only played 3 games before her career came to an end, averaging 0 points and 6 minutes a game. But the point is, I mean, she played college basketball, Division I, Texas A&M and Mississippi State, was a professional basketball player just a few years ago, right? So you have that, and as for Jada Parker, I mean, former soccer player, right? She's coming into the Performance Center as a former soccer player, and her dad played for the Chicago Bulls in the 90s. She went to LSU to play soccer, Division I. She played for the USA Under-17 team. So it's like a lot of these people are coming in and they've been talking about it for quite a while now, right? The fact that, we're moving into the idea where these guys are former football players, basketball players. With Tiffany Stratton, we see it right now, right?
Yeah.
And this match kind of is an example. And NXT as of late has really been heavy. This current class of NXT as of late is less of the indie wrestlers, less of the Roderick Strongs, the Adam Coles, the Becky Lynches. We've moved past it. This is really the era of the college star transformed from collegiate athlete, right? Where obviously Gabe Stevenson, his time is done in the WWE.
Now he's with the Buffalo Bills.
Now, which is strange, because I feel like, maybe that was on him for signing with WWE so early on before anything. But normally it's in reverse, right? You normally get cut from the Buffalo Bills or the NFL, and then you have this as your backup career, right? So it's really strange that if he was NFL caliber this whole time,
I wonder if he makes it, because obviously, Brock Lesnar obviously was from the same school, University of Minnesota, and he got a tryout in the NFL. Didn't he got close? He almost made the NFL. He was on the last cuts when he was there. I wonder what happens. I'm curious to see it, because obviously as folks, like us that are New Yorkers, Central New Yorkers, Buffalo's like the closest NFL team. So it'd be cool to see Gable Steveson make the team. I wouldn't expect Gable Steveson to be a playmaker on the Bills this year. Maybe he's a developmental player, and maybe he turns into something someday. But yeah, you're right though. It's really weird, because usually it's like guys like Roman Reigns who had a cup of coffee in the NFL, and then things just kind of worked out the way they did, and then came to WWE or whatever promotion they're in. Moose, same way. Moose was in the NFL, played at Syracuse here locally, played in the NFL for a few years with the Atlanta Falcons, and now Moose has been in the wrestling realm for years now. He hasn't been in WWE yet, but maybe he does. So again, it's a very interesting dynamic with Gable Steveson. But I do agree. It's definitely different, and I think that's what WWE is trying to go for. They're trying to go for those former Division I athletes instead of the Adam Coles, the Roderick Strongs of the world. I think unless it's somebody of the caliber of like All Eagle Ethan Page, I just don't see them going after those type of caliber guys anymore.
In the main event, we'll finish off the NXT Battleground talk right here with a guy who he was in 2018, part of the Philadelphia Eagles rookie minicamp, and that's Trick Williams.
Yeah.
So went the NFL route originally, right before coming to be now the NXT champion, taking on Ethan Page. From my understanding, has not really any background in the National Football League, or maybe he played some Canadian Football League rules at his high school in Ontario, Canada. But it's pretty much wrestling for him since
hey, actually, fun fact about Ethan Page: he is exactly 1 day older than me. So just a fun fact to it. I was doing some research on All Eagle Ethan Page, born September 20th, 1989. Yours truly was born September 21st, 1989. So All Eagle Ethan Page has me by officially 1 day.
And he's got more of the traditional wrestling background. His prior sports that he was in were wrestling related in the sense of karate and taekwondo. Yeah. So very much like essentially to be a pro wrestler, right? Nowadays we're seeing these Division I athletes, these people who are wanting to be football stars, track stars, basketball stars, becoming professional wrestlers. When in my day, it was the Ethan Pages of the world who one of their interests were like taekwondo and karate growing up, and their other interests were nerdy things like Ethan Page, avid toy collector, where he hunts around looking for rare and hidden and unique toys and action figures and makes a YouTube. And that's really what wrestling is. It's sport. Cool. It's fighting mixed with nerddom. And Ethan Page is a perfect collection of that, which is him taking on Trick Williams, a pure athlete. Who's winning? Who's leaving NXT Battleground as the NXT champion? Ethan Page or Trick Williams?
As much as Ethan Page, as I alluded to earlier on, how great WWE has received his work recently, I think it's a little too soon for him to get the strap just yet. I think Trick is in the early stages of his long time. I think it's going to be a long-term run for Trick Williams, so I have to go with Trick. It's going to be a really good match. It's going to be something I'm looking forward to for this weekend. But, you said 50-50. If I had to put a percentage on it, I would say I would lean more towards like 65% chance Trick wins, 35% chance All Eagle Ethan Page wins. Here's the thing. I'll just to add to that, it wouldn't completely shock me if Page won. I lean more towards Williams because of what he's done and how hot he is in the business right now. He's over like Grover, so to speak. He's on a roll. He's on fire. I just think, why put the extinguisher on that trick train, so to speak. Let him do his thing. All Eagle Ethan Page is just getting here. I think he's got a title run coming down the line. I just don't think it's yet.